Questions, Ms. Porter. Chair recognizes Mr. Biggs from Arizona.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate all the witnesses being here. Appreciate this. I apologize for having to step out for a portion of your testimony. I did hear the ranking member, and I thought at first he was talking about former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton claiming the 2016 election was stolen, and with all of the groups on the left that asserted that for literally 6 years now. I thought, but then I realized, no, he's got TDS. That would be wrong. So, leaving the political side of it out now, I thank you for your testimony, and I'll just say, Captain Fennell, in your book, Embracing Communist China, America's Greatest Strategic Failure, which I recently read, you argue that the United States should employ a modern-day Truman doctrine to counter the Chinese Communist Party. And there's some significant contextual differences between what was going on post-World War II with where we are today, and the ascension or the immersion of the Cold War. I'm wondering if you would discuss and tell us what aspects of the Truman Doctrine you think need to be implemented today with regard to China.
Well, I think that we need to look back on that history and understand that we were coming out of a world war, and that we were coming out of a time where we didn't know what the future would lead to with a threat from the Soviet Union. And so the government under Truman and his doctrine was designed to, make sure that we were defending ourselves against this potential threat. And so that we used the resources that we had to make sure that our government and our country were able to defend ourselves against a threat that we didn't know everything about it, but we knew that it had malign intentions for us. And I think that's the difference of what hasn't happened over the last 75 years is we haven't labeled the PRC as that threat, which the Truman Doctrine did with the Soviet Union, and that we didn't draw the distinctions and the line in the sand for a lot of reasons. And there was, we understand why we engaged with China.
For a lot of reasons, we did not perceive China as a threat because economically they were backwards, and we did not view them as a capable military threat, legitimately. And so we then facilitated their rise and their move from basically a third world economy with no technology. We allowed them to skip literally generations of technological development because we facilitated their theft of our IP and our technology. And so I appreciate what you're saying that. And so I'm thinking of all the things that I know went on in the Cold War, all the things we did, whether it was imposition on corporations, what we were selling, what we would allow in, the exchanges of people across the borders, not just directly U.S. to Soviet Union, but affiliates and within the blocks of countries. So, Mr. Bethel, your statement, you talk about a comprehensive strategy, and I've sensed that that's what all of you talk about. I'm trying to get specific iterated issues that we can look at, create legislation, and do what we're supposed to do, which is impose laws to enact policy. And, well, impose policy to enact laws, vice versa. It doesn't matter. But can you give me some of your strategies when you say a comprehensive strategy dealing with China?
I have to be sensitive about what I say because I recognize that the CCP could be listening, so I'm happy to take this on.
I anticipate that they are.
But I think the first strategy is to know what you want. I don't think we know what we want as a country. And so if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you in any direction.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that's an old kotowaza, as we would say in Japanese. But the bottom line is we want to be secure from China. We want to have control of our destiny. When China, the Middle Kingdom, they want to become the hegemon, the world hegemon. And that is the problem that we face, is dealing with a country that is willing to emasculate itself in order to gain the upper hand. And so that's why I'm asking. maybe you feel more comfortable talking in a skiff or something, but I'm trying to get specific items, not generic items. I mean, should we be limiting student visas from China, for instance? Maybe we should. We probably should. Should we then, and Ms. Kissel, in your document, you were talking specifically about how we are treated by CCP on diplomacy and diplomats and visitors, et cetera. Should we be doing the same? Should we be restricting travel of Chinese diplomats here? And I'd like to know.
100%. We talked a lot about reciprocity in the Trump administration, but there's a long way to go. We do not have freedom of movement in China. They should not have freedom of movement here. Our consular affairs people, as I say in my testimony, should be clearly vetting every person who enters from Communist China for military intelligence security ties. We should be limiting Chinese students who are coming here to study STEM. We should be talking to our European allies and encouraging them to forbid Chinese students who come from military universities in China for studying in European universities or Australian or Japanese universities, for instance. There's an enormous amount that the State Department can do. Aside from just the actions that I've outlined here, rhetorically, we need to issue clear, comprehensive travel warnings. I fought very hard when I was at State to get the Consular Affairs Bureau to put accurate, complete warnings out about the risk of travel. We now have different travel warnings for mainland China than we do for Hong Kong. These aren't functionally different places. They're one and the same. It should be the same level. Just to give you one example, but I agree with Eric that it has to be a comprehensive strategy, and we have to stop being defensive. We need an offensive strategy that plays to our strength and that also utilizes not just our own power economically, militarily, and otherwise, but the power of our friends and allies, because we also have friends and allies that aren't just democracies. There are places like Vietnam, for instance, not a democracy, that very clearly recognize the threat from Communist China. We need to leverage that relationship across the spectrum of federal power and use it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll just say, having met with Central American leaders over the last couple months, they're really concerned about the influence China's having in their nations. And you're right about them controlling, like Panama, or trying to get control of Panama. I think of Sri Lanka. I think of what happened there. I mean, I'll yield back.
Very good, very good. Chair recognizes Mr. Timmons from South Carolina.